All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live, and we have a real treat in store here tonight on Sportswire Radio because our guest, when I think about dominant breakout wrestling, this is a man that has pretty much done it all. He has been a world extreme champion. He's been a tag team champion, multiple time number one contender champion, world champion. In UWF, he's pretty much run that company and owned every single thing you can do there. And he is a true living legend. But in the current state, in dominant breakout wrestling, we are going to ask what is going on with him and the future, especially if you saw the most recent Thunder Punch episode 4, the ending of that show. He's going to answer some of that and some as we get ready for the biggest show in the company's history to date on September the 23rd, and this man may or may not be a part of it. He needs no further introduction, but because this is his first time here live on Sportswire Radio, he has to get that introduction that everybody else in DBW and everybody else around the world has gotten. So with that, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report. Number one global sports show. They call him the It Factor. Cyrus. My friend, how are you?
Good. How are you? I mean, personally, I love the introduction. Don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic introduction, but quite frankly, my professionalism of greatness doesn't need no introduction finer than what you presented.
Well, I can tell you DVG is not giving you that introduction. I can tell that anybody else that certainly you wrestle in has not given you that introduction. So that's why I said, let's make sure that we give you the introduction that you so deserve, to say the least. Obviously, it's a tremendous honor to have you. I've got comments here already. But you know, the It Factor, Cyrus, especially if you were a fan of dominant breakout wrestling, which most of us here are on Sportswire Radio, I have to ask you the burning question right off the bat in terms of why Cyrus Y at the end of Thunder Punch episode 4.
That's literally at this moment in time, that's essentially the $1 million question here in DBW. Everyone wants to know, why did Cyrus walk out? Why did Cyrus have eye contact with Mr. Judgment? The fact of the matter is this. I heard the comments from Mr. Judgment. I heard the comments from you about seeing the writing on the wall, so to say. There was no writing on the wall. The fact of the matter is this. Corey Graves did not understand the magnitude of the power, so to say, Definity has. Okay. I know all 3 men of Definity very, very well. I have gone to war with Mr. Judgment, which, mind you, we did host the first ever Heaven's Gate match. If you didn't watch it, that's Judgment.
Yes, I actually heard you talk about it on a podcast, actually.
Yes, I did mention that. I also have tremendous history with Caden Phoenix as well.
Yes.
And I did go to war with Sammy Nothing. So Corey Graves did not understand the magnitude he was going into this match. He was still, I don't want to say like so brain scrambled, so to say, because of what happened with him and Mr. Judgment. And the thing was, Ariel got involved. Listen, if you're taking on Mr. Judgment and you don't understand that Ariel's not going to be involved, well, then you're sadly mistaken and you haven't done your homework. Now, back to Corey Graves. He literally thought by getting 2 partners that he could take on Definity and take them down. Okay, I give him credit where credit is due. Okay. So then he interjects Mr. Fatal.
Yes.
Hell of a guy, let me tell you.
Oh, what a performer. No question about it.
Absolutely. I give him all the respect in the world. But again, Corey Graves did not know what he was getting himself into. So if Mr. Judgment wants to say I saw the writing on the wall, there was no writing on the wall. There was a mutual respect between myself and Definity. And I know that's another big question. Oh, is the It Factor going to join Definity? Oh, he has history with Definity. This, that. No. I am not joining Definity.
Right. Okay.
I am not teaming with any one of those 3 members.
Right.
What it is, it's a mutual respect between me and all 3 members.
Okay, I got that. And I got the history with Judgment. Certainly, Mr. Judgment spoke a lot about that. But you're not joining them.
Nope.
You're not aligned with them.
Nope.
I got that. But to me, you seem like a man without an island. You don't really have any place to go. You're not aligned with them.
Nope.
You turned on your partners because you obviously think that they're going down the wrong path. And that's fair. You make some valid points. Certainly, Mr. Judgment. I kind of agree with you there. Very, very difficult man to defeat. That's why he is the final boss in DBW. And I would dare say one of the final bosses in all of this sport. No questions asked on that. But where does that leave you, though, in DBW? You still have not answered that question.
And hey, I know you're right. I have not answered that question, but that question will be answered in time. There is a right time and a right place. That question will be answered.
I got that, but we have a show that's coming up on September the 23rd, the company's biggest show in its history, World War, which we're going to see live on YouTube coming up on the link below, October the 14th. Is that a potential time that we might see some of this story maybe start to at least unfold? Or eventually I would think it has to.
Oh, absolutely. At World War, listen, if you tune into World War when it premieres,
October the 14th, correct.
October the 14th, everyone will get the answers that they seek. I can promise you, everybody that's watching this right now, I can guarantee you at World War, every single one of your answers will be in check, and everyone will be just left flabbergasted at what I mean. Personally, I have an agenda. I really do.
You have an agenda.
Yes, I have an agenda. Let's put it this way. I have an agenda.
Okay. You have an agenda.
I'm not going to reveal my agenda because
I got that. And I tell you what, I'm actually going to do you a favor, the It Factor side, because they call you the It Factor, and you called me out on Twitter to come on Sportswire.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I'm actually going to do you a solid because I tell this to all my wrestlers around the world. I've said this time and time again for the past 5 years, just about. If you have a plan, the last place you want to reveal that plan is on Sportswire, because somebody's going to watch this and going to know already what you're going to be up to, what you're going to do, and whatever plan you might have for the locker room in DBW is going to go up in smoke. So I would tell you, giving you the advice, sir, that I would not reveal it here.
No, I have zero intention about revealing my plan.
Okay.
Zero. If you want to know, if you want to know the other further details, I'll be more than happy to, meet you personally in a private meeting, and I'll give you all the answers.
Well, I don't think that the locker room is going to get that meeting. I don't think that some of the people commenting here is going to get that, and I'll get to comments here shortly. But, you came back a few months back.
Yes.
And we've seen you sporadically. You returned against my first guest from DBW, Mr. Roland Havoc, for the World Extreme Championship, which you wrestled for. Mr. Havoc is somebody that I've gotten to know very well. So you came back. You were his mystery opponent.
Yes.
You've been in the ring limitedly since. So I have to ask you, will we see more of the It Factor, Cyrus, throughout the rest of the year and this season here in DBW? Because your return, since you've come back, it's really been very limited that we've seen you.
Yes. Well, just to give you a brief history as to why I've been very limited in my return. Last year I suffered an injury.
All right.
That I had a pinched nerve in my neck.
That's painful. That's very painful. It's painful.
Yes, I was required to take some time off per doctor's request, but they told me it was at my discretion if I wanted to keep going. So to further my career, I took a step back, I reevaluated everything, and I took the time needed. I met with my doctors. I have a tremendous team of doctors, and they told me at this point it was at my discretion. It was at my discretion if I wanted to get in there and compete. It was at my discretion if, like a time frame wise as to when I feel I need to stop competing. And I was 100% okay with that. I understood what they were, suggesting to me. And I heard Roland Havoc needed an opponent.
Yes.
So what better way to, former world extreme champion, mind you, if
And
anybody.
when you held that title, you were pretty much like the guy who held that title. I mean, you basically had no competition, if I recall correctly.
Exactly. I was the guy.
Yep.
There was other people prior to me. You had Sam Aiel.
Yep.
Which is Sammy Nothing now. You had RJ Carnage. You had Paradox. Not saying there weren't tremendous World Extreme champions, because they were. They set the precedent for the World Extreme division. But when I got to that World Extreme title, I had nobody. Literally nobody. My last opponent, which is ironic, was Corey Graves. And at that event, I dropped the title because there was no one left for me to compete for. So I felt that my time has come in the World Extreme division, and I sailed on to better pastures.
But then ironically, we saw you against Mr. Havoc in that championship, and you came very close to taking the title from Mr. Havoc. I mean,
yeah, because I never lost it. So why would I would made sure in that contest I tried to get the victory, but at the end of the day, Roland, great guy, great competitor.
Well, listen, what he's done, obviously, with Ego, and they have basically been the faction that's kind of, I guess, is going to fight Divinity, and they'll certainly have that fight on their hands. And I'll ask a little bit of that tomorrow night with the Blaze himself, Mr. Ace Christian. I'll certainly get some thoughts about you from Mr. Christian, I'm sure, in his spot tomorrow, and I'll ask you conversely about him in a little while. But, I mean, comes back about the neck injury. Obviously, a pinched nerve. We see this all the time. Guys have had it in baseball. Lenny Dykstra had it. David Wright had it with the Mets. This is a painful injury.
Yes.
And certainly, I have to ask then, and don't tell me what obviously the long-term outlook is, but I mean, how are you feeling now? And what is your body like? And realistically, in some of the stuff you've done in the past, what can you do now with this injury? Because obviously this is an injury that it doesn't really go away, kind of, basically. So how are you able to kind of do some of the things that you want to do? Or if you can't, how are you adjusting?
Yes. Over my storied career, yes, I've done some crazy things. I will be quite honest with you. I've dealt with barbed wire. I've dealt with flaming tables.
You were the light tube guy as well. You were the big light tuber when people weren't light tubing. I'm aware.
Yes, I was the light tube guy. But going forward, I had to literally switch up how I compete inside the squad circle. I've done physical therapy to rehab the injury. I feel comfortable to this present day to compete in any type of match. In the event I don't feel comfortable, it's something I evaluate on a match-to-match basis. It's not like I'm feeling good, and then halfway through a match that I'm, booked in, oh no, something. No, I make sure 110% that I am comfortable with the match I'm in. I am physically able to compete. It's not like I'm just being thrown into something where I know physically that I'm going to be, I don't want to say injured to some extent, but one slight move and you know how that goes.
Oh, listen, neck injuries, again, I mean, I mentioned in baseball, guys have had kind of that herniated disc, pinched nerve, and they never come back. But in wrestling, a neck injury is like almost the worst injury because guys never really are the same, or if they come back, they're basically wrestling on a very, very limited basis. That's why I ask you those questions, and certainly we hope that you'll continue to be able to do the things that you want to do. But I have a ton of comments. Let me say hello to people before I ask you more questions, sir.
Okay.
I want to say hello to Mr. Michael Blackheart. He is a huge fan of ours here on Sportswire Radio. He comes via Indiana. He is a big fan of XCW Shelbyville. I'll have more coverage of that company coming up Saturday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with their announcer, Trinity, who also does some ring work. He says, "What's up, good sirs?" Frankie the Villain says, "Good evening, gentlemen." Also, this individual, who I think knows you, calls you trash, says, "Never trust this guy whatsoever." Well, we're going to find that out.
Yeah, here we go.
Man, you've got the Trevor Phillips hairline. Well, I'm not one to judge on people's hairlines because look at my long hair, rather, and long facial hair. So I'm not going to certainly comment, good or bad. Why so, Rick? Somebody, though, calls you one of the greatest of all time. And I would dare say in DBW history, the facts are facts. You've pretty much done it all. You've been a world champion, world extreme champion, multiple time #1 contender champion. You've been tag team champion. You've pretty much done every single thing that there is in this company. And I want to say hello to also one of our more recent guests, who also is a co-host of the Protect Life show. This is Mr. The First Reel of Wrestling. He is Justin Parsley's Parsley. You can follow him on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter at Parsley's. He says, good evening, gents. Also, Mr. Blackheart says hello to him. And this individual wants to clarify why he feels the way he does, because they always have eye contact no matter what it is. Very untrustworthy man. So why does this individual say you're not so trustworthy? Tell me what I'm missing, sir.
Well, this certain individual is absolute filth.
I see. So you're using Mr. Judgment's words already, a man that you said you weren't aligned with. Okay,
yes.
Good enough.
Yes.
Good enough.
Again, it's mutual respect.
Mm-hmm.
Mutual respect.
Right.
It just so happens, well, I'll take you down memory lane, so to say. If you watch the history of DBW, which chances are you probably have, because you're a great...
Yes, I actually have watched as much as I can over the past, I would say, 2 months. Yes, I have.
Yes. Back in 2016, when I first started in DBW, I competed in my first match against, it was Caden Phoenix at the time. And after that match, there was a backstage segment that was caught on camera between me and Mr. Judgment.
Yes.
And at the time, he saw how I competed in the ring. He liked my work in the ring, and he wanted me to join this faction called the Dark Brotherhood. Okay. So he reached his hand out. We shook hands. There was a bond formed right there. And this individual that's calling me trash thinks just because we had a handshake and we had eye contact that automatically yours truly is going to join Mr. Judgment again.
They do say in life. Now, I come from a business world, and I also come from the political world. And one of the things they say that your word is as good as almost anything else, and you're known by your handshake and your words. So isn't there a point that I'm not taking sides, because obviously that's in the past. I want to focus on today. But they say that the only thing that you can count on in life is your word. You're as good as your word, and you're as good as basically that handshake. So tell me what I'm missing.
Yeah, you're missing the fact that you're focusing on the handshake heard around the world 7 years ago,
right?
When it's not even relevant today. Because like I mentioned in the beginning here, and Rev, I love you to death. You're a great guy. Much respect to you. But again, it's a mutual respect between me and Mr. Judgment.
Okay.
And
I'm trying to understand this. Yeah, I'm trying to understand this, because Mr. Judgment does have a prize, but also now you may have the appreciation and respect for the man.
Yes.
But we had him on here a month ago, which I'm sure you're aware of, because you're obviously aware of it, because that's how we connected. But he doesn't seem like, to me, a man that really respects or loves many people. He seems like a man that basically looks to do what he wants, and that's pretty much about it. He's pretty much a man that doesn't seem like he has a soft spot for anybody, or he has maybe deep down a little bit of a soft spot, or whatever else you might want to fill in the blanks for. He does not seem like a man that is human, frankly.
Yes, he is not human. Obviously, he is a prophet, as everyone knows.
Yes.
But again, the facts are facts. He has no respect for the mortals that he, takes on inside the ring. And he, at the time, 7 years ago, he was entrusting me to be in this faction to dominate DBW. And we set the precedent going forward. And if you recall, which I know you probably have because you've done your homework, DBW stood for Dark Brotherhood Wrestling.
Yes. There's been different name changes. Yes, that I'm certainly familiar
with.
That's
what it stood for, and that's what it always stood for in the history books, in my opinion. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Judgment, you are absolutely right. He is his own entity. And as far as choosing sides and picking partners or groups, He has an agenda. He has a plan. I am
Absolutely.
not a part of his plan, despite what anybody thinks. I am not a part of his
So
plan.
can I ask then, is it fair to say that you don't want to be in his crosshairs? Is that a fair statement to ask?
Hey, that is a fair statement to ask, because in the event we did cross paths at one point, I will be more than happy to go toe to toe with him again, because I have the winningest record against him.
Oh, listen, the history that you have with him, I would say in your career in DBW, maybe anywhere else, you're going to be known by one of two opponents, him and Casey James. So
Yes.
obviously, I get that you know this man better than anybody. Let me get to some more comments here. And Frankie says, watch the Judgment pop up out of nowhere. I don't think Mr. Judgment's coming on here tonight unless I know something or hear something differently. I mean, I haven't been here. I know that some people watch these shows on Sportswire and wrestlers kind of interfere on each other. But as far as I know tonight, I don't expect Mr. Judgment to be here tonight. And I know people watch these shows and they see like the IMF and WC running each other, even in England. I do stuff in England and some of the pros running on each other and they kind of go back and forth. But I don't anticipate, because I'm trying to get to know the It Factor Cyrus.
Yes.
I'd like to know his story a little bit, because he's going to be with Judgment, see the writing in his eyes. Well, he's telling us that the time will come when he'll talk about
Yes.
where he wants to go. So I have to take his word for it right now. I mean, if he does that down the road, that's between him and DBW right now, today, in this present, sir, this present
right
tense. He's telling us that he's not joining with Divinity. He's not joining with Judgment. He'd even like a match with him still down the road. But basically, he's got mutual respect for him. He's got appreciation for him. He's got history, and he's moving away with it.
Yes.
And this individual continues to say, you don't like the truth. Exactly.
Yes.
And Michael wants to say, what do you call your ruling neck breaker?
I have really no name for it. Obviously my swinging neck breaker is just something I incorporated into my moveset, because when I was incorporating my moveset going forward, I wanted the old school traditional headlock, neck breaker, snap suplex. I'm more of a technical kind of wrestler.
You're different than Judgment, because Judgment
Yes.
basically is like a scientist in the ring. He basically created moves, and it's almost like he's like a video game in the ring.
Yes, absolutely. And my neck breaker is very vicious, and I don't have a name for it. Obviously, will I have a name for it down the road? Maybe, but as currently right now, I do not have one.
Okay, well, you know what? Listen, never say never here.
Nope, never say never.
I have to ask you then, in continuing in the present and future tense,
Okay.
I mean, what are your goals now that you're in DBW? You're back here and you're ready, I guess, to do some things here. You've talked about a little bit of different things that we'll have to wait and stay tuned for. But what are your individual goals in DBW now that you're back here for the rest of the year?
My individual goals in general are quite simple: to stack wins and get it less losses as possible. Listen, if I get another world title opportunity at Mr. Judgment, so be it. If I get a tag team title opportunity, so be it. If I find a partner in the back somewhere, hey, great, you want to tag with me? Let's go. We'll go get the tag titles. But one intriguing factor that, people haven't really talked about, and I know you haven't touched upon it, is the fact that let's talk about the DBW Global title.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. How RJ Carnage, hell of a competitor, hell of a guy, set the standard for the global division. Literally set the global division on fire. And it was very unfortunate that he had to drop the global title. But honestly, he's on to, some greener pastures. He has a path that he wants to take.
Just like Chase Wakefield, obviously, he's on to greener pastures. He's no longer in DBW.
Yes, we know. Yep. Chase Wakefield, we know. But but honestly, I think RJ Carnage was delaying. I think RJ Carnage was delaying the inevitable. I think he knew something was coming on the horizon, so he got out quickly.
So are you saying he basically hit the bricks before things hit the fan, more or less?
Absolutely. That's my opinion. And I'm sticking to it. I think he knew something was coming on the horizon, and he tucked his tail between his legs, dropped that global title, and said, I am out of here.
Interesting. And that's obviously something that you obviously have a strong opinion on.
Yes, I do.
Okay, interesting. I'll come back to that. Mr. Blackheart would like to say you have a great night. Looking for my chance one day to be on Sportswire.
Yes.
Well, at this point,
Get
never
that
say
man on.
never.
Get that man on.
Okay, I'll try. Listen, at this point, you have no idea. Listen, I mean, let me break the fourth wall. There are people that message me these days. I don't even know them. They're like, "Hey, can I come on Sportswire?" And I'm like, "Come again?" I'm like, "Okay, all right, give me time."
Yes.
It's like I get messages from people all over the place, and I'm like, "All right, I really appreciate you watching and tuning in." And this individual again says, "Okay, we'll believe his words." Then
Thank
you
you.
spoke about the World Championship, and
Yes.
I do have to bring it up again because you talked about Mr. Judgment, and my guest tomorrow night is the man that's going to challenge him, the Blaze Ace Christian, a man you know very, very well, very safe to say on that. And he's going to make his case tomorrow as to why he's actually going to try and beat Mr. Judgment at next week's taping, which will air again on October the 14th. I mean, are we basically dismissing the Blaze Ace Christian? I mean, he found a way time and time again here to win these matches, these Herculean efforts, and he's
Yes.
got certainly friends now in Ego, and they got his back, and he's been a world champion here before. And oh, by the way, his father is Mr. Judgment. I mean, so are we basically discounting the Blaze Ace Christian? I mean, to be fair, I have gone on live here with Mr. Judgment, and I basically feel that Mr. Christian, we're going to see his last rites here coming up in next week's show. So I have to ask you, because you've talked about it, you've talked about Judgment. Does the Blaze Ace Christian have a chance? Are we just dismissing him? Or tell us what you think, since you know these guys better than anybody.
Listen, everybody dismisses Ace Christian right from the start because of his size.
I think
And
Brandon Castelli did. I mean, Brandon Castelli,
yeah.
basically, we had him on here. I mean, he thought for sure he was going to be the guy facing Judgment, and yet we saw what happened at the last show.
I mean, personally, I was supposed to be the guy to face Judgment, honestly, because I was in that gauntlet tournament, and it took
I'm
both.
aware.
It took both men to pin me down. I'm still disgruntled about that to this day, but we're not
Fair.
going to touch upon that. But Ace Christian is always getting discouraged and counted out because of his size and his capability to compete in the ring. I'm not saying he's bad, not by any means. He is a great competitor. But when you go up against a man like the DBW World Champion,
Yep.
what you have to go to a greater length that you've never gone before in order to get that world title. And personally, in my opinion, I don't think Ace Christian is at that level yet.
Well, I look at Mr. Judgment, right? Objectively speaking, let's talk about this for a second, because again, Mr. Christian's going to make his case tomorrow night, 8:00 Eastern time here. Same channel, same place, same chair that Cyrus is in. But I mean, I look at Mr. Judgment. I look at his size. I look at those muscles. I look at the tattoos. I look at that face. I look at his moveset. And I look at Divinity. And I look at Mr. Christian, and sure, he's found his way to win in these stipulations, these gauntlets. Castelli, sure. But Judgment to me is right now truly the final boss. I mean, he's a guy that's held championships in pro wrestling companies currently.
Yes.
I mean, this is a guy, I'd put my money on him against guys that I have come on from England and other places. I mean, so I guess I'm going to ask you the same question again. And I've asked this to Mr. Castelli. I've asked this to obviously Mr. Judgment himself, Chase Wakefield. Maybe Mr. Christian, is it better off for him not to show up next week? Maybe he should find something else to do. Maybe he should stick to, I don't know, being on the football field, because it seems to me, basically, off all these factors, yeah, I know, we basically kind of pulled one there a little bit, that he doesn't have a prayer really in this one.
I wouldn't say he doesn't have a prayer. He does have a prayer. He is former DBW World Champion.
Yes, he's been there, no question.
He's been on the mountaintop once before. So to sit here and say that he's automatically counted out of that world title match at World War would just be discrediting his ability to compete at the main event level. Personally, like I said, he's just not at the level that Mr. Judgment's at now. Is Mr. Judgment the final boss? No. I think he is the boss, though, but I don't think he is the final boss.
Okay, but let me ask you then a follow-up, because you know what? You did talk about the gauntlet match. You've been a world champion. You are certainly on the Mount Rushmore of DBW. So you know what? I am going to grill you and put you on the spot for a second, but hear me out. Wouldn't it be in your interest, sir, if actually Mr. Christian somehow finds a way and wins the championship, wrest that title away from Mr. Judgment? Because wouldn't it open it up for a whole list of people on this roster that could wrest that title from Ace Christian? Because Mr. Judgment, I mean, I don't think he's letting go of that title anytime soon if he certainly buries his son and puts him underground, as he's basically said here on social media. So wouldn't it be in basically your favor and others, like let's say Mr. Castelli or anybody else out there on the roster, that it's in yours and others' interest to have, let's say, Ace Christian the Blaze find a way and pull off the miracle and defeat Mr. Judgment so you could get maybe your shot at reclaiming that championship you once dearly held?
Yeah, but essentially what you're trying to say is, do you want to take the easy path or do you want to take the hard path? Because
but it doesn't matter which way you become a champion.
No, it does not matter at all. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, there's a lot of men in that locker room that are able to go one-on-one with Mr. Judgment. There's a lot of men in the locker room also that could go one-on-one with Ace Christian at any moment in time. But at the end of the day, if you're number one contender for that DBW World title, it shouldn't matter who holds that DBW title.
But I would feel comfortable if I'm in that roster knowing I'm facing Ace Christian and he's the champion rather than Mr. Judgment. Because, again, he's got divinity. He's got those tattoos. He's got that look. He's got that moveset. He's got those muscles. And pound for pound, he's one of the best big men in this sport. What he does in terms of his moveset, yet again, I mean, this is a guy that basically has video game-like moves in the ring. I'd certainly much rather have my chances with Ace Christian the Blaze and take that title from him rather than Mr. Judgment. I mean, again, it doesn't matter how you get the title. I would still, again, go back to the fact that I want Christian to win the title if I'm you in most of that locker room right now.
Yes, and that you make a very valid point. But, again, Ace Christian needs to overcome Divinity.
Yes.
He needs to overcome Ariel.
Right.
Needs to overcome the massive moveset that Mr. Judgment has.
Agreed.
Ace Christian right now, in order for him to claim the DBW World title again, would have to pretty much take a very huge monumental step and make sure Ego is in his corner.
I think without Ego, he has less than zero.
Oh, absolutely. Less than
Ego,
zero.
He's got somewhat of a chance. I still don't know what those odds are. I will say, though, it almost reminds me, I don't want to quite say that Mr. Christian has a prayer, but he might have to sing Sister Christian from Night Ranger, because that's kind of almost a prayer that he does. You know, he's gonna try to convince me and most of the audience tomorrow night. We'll have to find out, but we're having a great time here right now with the It Factor himself, Cyrus. And I want people to follow Dominant Breakout Wrestling on YouTube at Dominating Breakout Wrestling, where you can watch World War on October the 14th. The show itself will be taped on September the 23rd. So if you have a chance, go out and find a way to get a ticket, because this is going to be the biggest show yet in the company's history. Check them out on Facebook at Dominating Backyard Wrestling. Also on YouTube, close to 3,300 subscribers. So join the movement, subscribe to shows, whether it's Thunder Punch shows, all the other shows the company puts on. They get thousands and thousands of views. And this is really, to me, one of the gold standard companies when it comes to wrestling out there. This is a company that is morphed and transcended over time to where I consider it a pro wrestling company. If you are a wrestling fan, I promise you, this is a company that has it all, and Cyrus is a huge part of it. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am the man behind Sportswire Radio, and if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, you can listen to us live 24 hours a day on sportnarium.com/player. We play podcasts, we simulcast these shows, we have music, we have DJs, we have pretty much everything in between. Check us out. You can also watch all of our previous shows, including Dominant Breakout Wrestling stars like Brandon Castelli, Chase Wakefield. I don't know what his future is, but also Mr. Judgment himself was a part of it. Mr. Havoc. It's a who's who of people that are a part of DBW or have been a part of DBW. You can watch those shows on our YouTube page. You can follow me on Instagram at the Sports Report 2021. You can also check us out on Twitter at Thomas Price 2017, Facebook on Sportswire Radio. And again, I'll be back with Mr. Christian 8 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Wednesday, I'm back 7:30 p.m. British Standard Time with UK wrestling stars, the Nomad Dalton Garrett and Champagne Charlie. Thursday night, 8 o'clock British Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I am with the brand new, undisputed Bolton Town Wrestling Champion of the world, the vigilante of pro wrestling, Bentley himself, who's getting ready for World Championship number 2, coming up this weekend in the Fountains Church and GT Ministries main event against Rarebit. So definitely stay tuned for that. And Friday, I'll be back also 8 p.m. British Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time with the rock idol of the UK, Jenny Hay. So we have a full slate of shows here on Sportswire Radio. We're also working on some things as we're moving toward our 5-year anniversary of Sportswire Radio. So stay tuned for more details on that. But right now, we are having a great time here with the legendary man, myth, legend himself, the It Factor, Cyrus. So Cyrus, I have to ask you then, in terms of everything that you've done in DBW, I want to talk to you about UWF, where you have been known there and done a lot of things. So talk about for the audience some of the things you've done in UWF and why have you dominated that company and done things there that basically rival what you've done here in DBW.
Well, UWF, it's UWF-NY, and it's Ultimate Wrestling Federation up in.
And that's in upstate New York, if I'm not mistaken. I'm in downstate.
Yes, based out of Lake Katrine, New York.
I know it very well.
It is a beautiful company to compete in. A lot of great competitors have come and gone in that company. I was Ultimate Champion there.
Mm-hmm.
I was a tag champion. I was any title, honestly. I was a Grand Slam champion.
I was about to actually say you were basically the equivalent of a Grand Slam champion.
Yes, I was the Warrior Championship, which their Warrior Championship is an equivalent to DBW's #1 contender title. The concept is you become Warrior Champion, but at some point you can cash that in to get an opportunity at the Ultimate title.
Almost like a Money in the Bank situation.
Yes. So, and like I said, I have nothing but respect for, the people up there that have competed there, the owners and everything. And that is a great company. Check them out on YouTube as well, UWF-NY. They haven't posted any content yet. They're doing a full revamp of everything, roster, how the company's ran and everything. But stay tuned because, again, they are coming back stronger than ever.
Okay, well, we'll certainly find out there. Was there a memory or two that stood out most in your career over there?
That's a good question. I would have to, I really don't have really a definitive moment, honestly. All the moments up there that I've had were pretty monumental. No moment really stands out, but if I had to pick a moment that stands out, I was in a match with Jim Connors.
Okay.
It was for the Ultimate title, and Scorpion the Assassin was the special.
Oh, we know Scorpion. He was the DBW champion not too long ago. We know Scorpion very well. Another guy, it's another DBW standout.
Yes, and Scorpion the Assassin was a special guest referee. And at the time, me and Scorpion had a little scuffle, but it wasn't nothing major. And what ended up happening was Scorpion ended up hitting me with the chair and costing me my match.
Ooh.
And the gamer, Jim Connors, pretty much became champion. And that moment stand out. And then going forward, me and Scorpion had a little bit of a scuffle, but it never accumulated into anything majorly. Scorpion ended up taking a different path, and I just kept going through the cycle of winning titles, competing at the highest level possible.
But you were the belt collector before the term was such a thing, basically.
Absolutely. I tried to collect as many titles as possible.
All right, fair enough here. And I'm curious very quickly, because obviously I'm from New York. And how did you like wrestling up there, upstate in New York?
I didn't mind it at all. I thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy the ride going up.
That's a commute. Yes, that's why I was wondering about that. What your experience was like in that?
It's almost 2.5, 3 hours.
Okay. Yeah, it's about right. I kind of thought that from where you are. Yeah, that makes sense to me. About 3 hours.
But I met Scorpion and the gamer down at DBW. And at the time, they were looking for competitors, and I jumped on board, and I said, you know what? Hey, I said, hell, I'll come up. I said, you tell me time, place, book me in a match. I don't care who I'm facing against, nothing. I said, I'll be more than happy to come up here and compete. They're like, great, no problem. They sent me out the match card. They said, this is who you're going against. They said, great, I'll be up. And ever since then, it's been a beautiful
Do
partnership.
they really have one of those old match cards? You remember growing up, they would have, like, if you go into like a house show, whether it's an independent or major show, they would have like a match card, and they'd actually have like from top to bottom. Like, did they actually really have one of those the way you said that term?
Yeah, yes, we saw the match card at one point, and they had it like that. But ever since
Oh,
then,
wow. Okay.
it's been tweaked. And like I said, they do a tremendous job at running that company, and I'm forever grateful for them giving me the opportunity to compete there and to continue to compete there once they come back fully strong in 2024.
We look forward to that. Obviously, certainly that would be a topic that we would love to cover here on Sportswire Radio when that time comes. And 2024 is not that far away, because today is September the 11th, and obviously we're about maybe 4 or 5 months away from the start of 24. And obviously, season there would probably, I would imagine, be in the middle of the year, so less than a year away. And that's great stuff to look forward to. You know, I was curious because you mentioned Scorpion the Assassin, obviously Mr. Judgment. Guys like you guys have been in this game a long time, and Mr. Havoc would also fit that bill. And I was curious then, how do you evolve over time? How do you keep yourself relevant and be able to be where you want to go in terms of have that mindset to kind of continue and keep going? I'm curious about that from a general standpoint, because obviously, again, you've been in this game about 25 years.
Yes.
Mr. Havoc's been in the game a very, very long time. Mr. Judgment's been in the game, I think, 20, 21 years also. And then you've obviously Scorpion the Assassin. He's been in the game forever. So I'm curious, I mean, how do you guys continue to stay relevant and keep evolving?
In the beginning is, you know, your basic, and again, like we discussed, it's basic your backyard. You started out from the bottom and then you get up to here. And
right.
To keep yourself relevant, again, you have to evolve with the times. You know, going back years ago, you know, you go from wrestling on a ground, and then you go from wrestling on a makeshift ring, and then you go to wrestling on mattresses. Then you go from wrestling hardcore style, and then you go wrestling technical style. And you have to evolve each step of the way, because if you don't evolve each step of the way, you're just going to get lost in the shuffle with everybody that's going forward in this business.
Sure.
And luckily, I was able to keep myself relevant with companies I competed in and changing up my character each step of the way. And I'm forever grateful that I'm able to be where I'm at today.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to evolve. I even go back in music in a way. I think it's because I've done a lot of stuff in music also, interview-wise on Sportswire, and I had heard at the time the singer of Jeff Tate from Queensryche, when he's no longer the singer of Queensryche, and they asked him, well, you know, how have you been able to kind of stay relevant? He talked about, well, you know, you have to always, as a musician, try to evolve. You have to always, you can't write the same album. You can't keep writing Operation Mindcrime, Empire. You have to find ways to kind of evolve as a songwriter and a musician. I think it's the same way in wrestling, and I'll get to more comments here in a second, but I was also wondering, in terms of now DBW going back in the present tense, you guys have had a really, really big roster, and you guys have been the definition of evolving, because you guys basically started out literally, I guess you might want to say, at the very bottoms, to where now you guys are pretty much like, and I think I've said this a couple of different times, right there, basically right there of being like a pro wrestling company. So talk about watching this journey and being a part of the ride, and what's that been like?
Yes, I'll be more than happy to talk about the journey in DBW. I personally started in 2016.
Yes.
In a beautiful Hancock, Maryland. We started there. Yes. And then it just kept growing and growing. And, you know, we went from a makeshift ring, and then we upgraded to, you know, a professional ring. And we went from being outside to inside, and being inside, a whole new atmosphere opened up, and it really elevated everybody's game in DBW that competed in DBW in the past and in the present currently.
Sure.
And every step of the way that DBW has evolved from when I've been there, and I'm more than happy to be along for this incredible journey. It's been one hell of a ride, and I continue to be on this, you know, journey going forward. And as far as me having a time frame as to when I want that journey to end, I do have a time frame in my mind, but It's not there yet. It's
I was gonna say, like I told you at the very beginning, don't say it here on Sportswire.
no.
I will say this in wrestling: you can never say never because guys all the time say, "Yeah, I'm gonna retire. My time is done." And you see them come back, and then they forget they retired. So, I would say you'll know when that time comes. But was there ever a point that you didn't think this was going to work out in DBW? Because I haven't really got a chance to ask that question, but you've been here a long time. You've also been a veteran. Brandon and Chase and some of those guys are a little younger, so they may not understand some of this. Not that they don't understand, but they've only been in wrestling a certain amount of time. But you've been doing this, again, a quarter century. So you can kind of see things, and you're also a little bit older in life. You have different experiences. Was there ever a time you didn't think it was going to work in DBW? You guys going to be a certain thing? Because obviously the company has just evolved to what it is. So kind of walk me through if there was ever moments you thought different things.
There wasn't really a definitive moment. Coming into DBW, the ultimate goal was to win the DBW championship. That was the ultimate goal. I didn't expect to win the DBW title ultimately within a year, but I did. And it set up a storyline with Mr. Judgment.
Yep.
And our promos back and forth were tremendous. I even took over the DBW Facebook page.
Yes, I do recall. You have like some live chats even? You basically went live just without even almost going, more or less.
Yes, I went live on the DBW Facebook page. I hijacked the page. I was pretty much telling the company that Mr. Judgment was not giving everybody opportunities to any person in the back. He was holding the title hostage. He wasn't. Oh yeah. It was fun.
Some people, Mr. Christian, may feel that that's what he's still doing right now in this present moment. I mean,
yes, that's what it seems like he's doing now. But when I had that storyline with Mr. Judgment, I said, you're not willing to give other people an opportunity to compete. And at the time, he was supposed to be the hero to save the company because I was going to leave the company with the title and venture off into other companies and compete at various levels and defend that DBW World title. But again, when the time for the match came, he came out to that entrance and he still got booed. And he literally told everyone in attendance, this was the best part, told everybody in attendance, why am I being booed when I'm trying to save the company?
I think because people look at him and he's a natural person you don't want to cheer for. I think that's what it is.
No, and the thing was, again, I had so much momentum going into that Heaven's Gate match, and we really set the standard for ladder matches. That was the first ever Heaven's Gate match. After that, I had another Heaven's Gate match. There was a tag team Heaven's Gate match, and we pretty much, like I said, set the precedent for Heaven's Gate matches. And we did not know until a month later that match was an hour long.
Wow. It's interesting because I have guys coming all the time and they say, Tom, I could tell a certain time in the match and how long it went, but you basically didn't even know you were wrestling for an hour. That's wild.
What happened was once the footage aired, if you subtract our entrances that were incorporated into the match itself, literally the match was in 1 hour and 5 minutes. And
okay. I think the Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart wasn't even an hour and 5 minutes. I think it was just like a minute or two under that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was. Yes. And again, it did not feel that way at all.
Wow. Okay.
We were just going with the flow of the match. And at the end of the match,
and you weren't even gassed at all. There was no point that you were gassed. Wow.
No. At the end of the match, I was gassed. That's for sure. But no, at any point during that match, I was not gassed. And
wow, I'm impressed. I've had a lot of guys come on. I just had a guy, Dean Allmark, last week, who has defeated the likes of Jake the Snake Roberts, Bryan Danielson. He's been in there with all these pros, and I think even he would have been gassed in a situation. This guy's wrestled 5,000 times in his career, and he would have probably said, "Yeah, Tom, that's a long time."
And the trick to that was during that ladder match, it was I said I've been in multiple ladder matches over my career. I'm a ladder match specialist. But I knew I had to pace myself. And if I paced myself to where I knew what I had to do in order to defend the title, and in order to keep that title, I had to literally pace myself from the start to the finish, and I was able to do that, and it pretty much it's one of the top matches in DBW history, honestly.
Well, I think people can certainly go back and find that again on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Dominant Breakout Wrestling. I do want to get to some comments because people have tuned in. They'd like to say hello. Jim with a long M. So this individual probably knows who you're referring to. So we'll say hello. I want to say hello to Omen Black, who is the IMF World Heavyweight Champion. We saw Mr. Black yesterday on the air. He also asked you a question that we kind of know, but I'll ask it anyway because, well, it is his show on sports.
It's not his show. No.
It's a running joke we have.
I don't care if it's a running joke. Tonight, this is my show.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue with that, sir. You are a 25-year veteran, but I'll leave that aside for a minute. And he asked, which is a general dummy question, but I know the answer. You know the answer. Are you familiar with Ego, and do you have an opinion on them?
I wouldn't say I'm 100% familiar with Ego. I did take on
Havoc, you know very well, though.
Yes, I know Roland Havoc very well. I've competed with them on multiple occasions. I have competed against Austin James and Colin Graves. I competed against them as well. So I wouldn't say I'm 100% familiar with them. I would say maybe like a 50-75 ratio.
Okay.
But yes, I am familiar with them to an extent, so to say.
Well, Mr. Black would like to pass a message to them, not you so much, but to them. He wants a message from himself and the foundation, which he's a part of in the IMF. He says, tell Ego that their days are numbered. We officially invite them to Summer Bash next year, July 5th to 7th, and dare them to show up for some real competition. Well, that's between them and Mr. Black and Soldier GP, so I'll leave that at that. That's fine.
Can I say one comment before we go forward about the foundation?
Yes, sure. You say anything you want, sure.
I will say absolutely everything I want. Thank you for putting the message back up. Anyway, I'm not impressed with the foundation, number one.
Okay.
Not impressed by any means. And they officially invite them to Summer Bash. Hell, I will go to Summer Bash myself, and I'll take on the foundation with Ego.
Really?
Yes,
you
really.
Do that.
Yeah, really. I keep hearing the foundation and how they're dominant this and dominant that. Listen, they don't know what domination is if it smacked them right in the goddamn face. Listen, the fact of the matter is this. I will personally come to Summer Bash. I will contact Ego, and I will make sure I hitch a ride with them. And there's not even a dare at this point.
So may I kindly, respectfully ask, where does this maybe animosity come from? I'm just curious, trying to parcel this out here. Just forgive me for being a mediator.
Not really animosity. The fact of the matter is, I get very. I don't want to say I didn't get very offended, but it irks me to no end when people have come on your show like Omen Black and the Foundation, and they quote set the standard for this and set the standard for that, and they're great and they're gonna dominate. No, I've seen them. I'm not impressed by any means. Okay. And again, at the end of the day, I will be more than happy to come to Summer Bash. Hell, I will take on all members of the foundation myself personally. But again, if you want Ego, I'll be more than happy to contact Ego personally and tell them that they have a challenge that was issued to them, and I will make sure they show up.
Wow. Oh, you know what? I didn't see this one coming. I got to be honest. We didn't talk about this at all. I mean, this is basically live, basically worldwide here on Sportzwire Radio.
Absolutely live.
This is like, shoot, I got to be honest. We didn't even speak about it. It was basically like we spoke before. Hey, we're going to talk, obviously, DBW, your career, some of the things we did. I had no idea, literally, that this was going to come up. I just thought, hey, we'll talk DBW, promote the show, promote what you're going to do. I asked you, I want to talk about your future, what happened at Thunder Punch, and you're basically coming out with some punches, coming out swinging
I'll come out swinging at anybody. I will take on any challenge, and I
so you're saying then you're not. So basically, let me get this straight, and I do want to come back to DBW because there's a lot I still want to get to here for the time that you have. You look at it, and these guys like Omen Black, Soldier GP, they take on these guys. How can I respectfully put this? Like guys in WCE, almost like these guys that, I don't want to call them, B people, but almost kind of like a little bit above novices. Basically, like, they're still on the training wheels. Their microphone skills are,
I've seen a couple of them.
What's that?
I've seen a couple of the people in WCE.
Yeah, you're not impressed with them, is what you're trying to tell me.
I'm impressed to a fault. There are a couple guys that can't compete. There are a couple guys that are green, and there's a couple guys that get on that mic and literally talk the talk. But at the end of the day,
but you're saying they're not what you've basically wrestled in your career. What I'm trying to get out here is that when you see like Omen Black and Soldier go to these companies like ROEW and they go to WCE, and from what your vantage point, this is not my opinion, but your vantage point, you look at it and say, well, it's not the talent in DBW, because the DBW locker room is really where the big boys play. I look at DBW. DBW is basically a pro wrestling company. And, WCE, it's a nice company. It's fun, but it's almost kind of like going to like Cheers Tuesday on NBC at like 9:00 in the evening and everybody's drunk in the bar. Whereas in DBW, you get the pro wrestlers that come in that have had long catalogs, long resumes, and it's like a professional show is what you're trying to tell me.
Yes, we are the standard barrier in wrestling, period.
I would say you guys are certainly that. I don't even put you guys in the category of
we are the standard barrier. Listen, we are the standard barrier in wrestling, period. I just mentioned that. And our lovely partners down in VTW, they're also the standard.
VTW, I tell you, let me tell you,
barriers as well.
Yes, VTW is up there, but I actually might even put you guys slightly above that just because you guys have the live audience. You guys are in the building. I kind of feel with the live crowd coming up and the live music and the different sponsors. I think there's even that a little bit above VTW. But again, VTW, phenomenal company.
Yes.
There's great companies at the XCW. I want to give honorable mention to because some of the guys early on came off, and they've been an original company for a long time. But I have a ton of comments, and I want to come back to some more questions.
Comments away.
But Mr. Black, I want to get to Mr. Black first. He also says that show up for real competition. He says, deal. He calls you an old man. You just made the worst mistake you've ever made besides your decision of putting hefty bags on the wall. Real cool boomer. Bring it to Summer Bash. That's what Mr. Black would like to say.
Yeah.
Michael Blackheart wants to say wrestling is an art and a brotherhood. I agree with that. But I got a good question for you, and I'll come back to some of this later on. But Cyrus, you've competed against a lot of wrestlers in your career. Is there any wrestlers you would not compete against?
No, hands down. I will not come out and say, no, I do not want to compete against this certain individual. If any individual out there saw what I've done in DBW, what I've done in UWF, and they say, hey, that's the guy I want to compete with, that's the guy I want to compare myself with, and they issue a challenge, I will more than happily accept that challenge, hands down.
Well, let me throw something out there. I don't know if you've kept track, but is it fair to say that you've wrestled, 500 to 1,000 matches somewhere in the ballpark? Is that a fair statement for me to make?
Yes, that's an absolute fair statement.
So then my follow-up almost is, and Omen Black has certainly established himself, but if you look at the amount of matches he's had and Soldier GP have had in their careers, or even the people in places like WCE, I would venture to say it's probably a tenth of the type of matches or the experience that you've had. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I mean, it's less than a tenth, but we're not going to go there because,
Right, so you feel very confident and comfortable in the fact that there isn't really anything that you haven't seen in the ring, and that these guys, compared to you, let's say, per se, are pretty green out there, and their lack of experience basically is what's going to be their undoing if the opportunity presented itself that you would wrestle these individuals or multiple individuals.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm just using some of the skills I learned in law class. That's what I'm just, which I didn't go into law, obviously, as you can see, but I did learn some of that there. So exactly. I will come back. I didn't, I just couldn't do law. I got to be honest. I had long hair. I had mutton chops. I was like, I'm not going to go and sit there in a suit and tie and go.
By the way, before you go forward, I do love the mutton chops. I love them.
I've been doing this 5 years, and I've pretty much been growing them for 5 years. So I appreciate that. I almost am so terrified to actually shave them off.
No.
I've been offered. I'm not. I've actually been offered money to shave them off, but thankfully financially, like I'm okay, so I don't need it. But I can't tell you on the air how many times I've been offered that. But let me go back to more comments here.
Okay.
One person I want to face off in the future hopefully comes from Big Tex.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't mind facing one-on-one with Big Tex. Big Tex is great individual.
Sure.
He's an up-and-coming DBW star.
Yep.
I still feel
I've seen him on here before on Sportswire. Sure.
Yes, I still feel he has a lot to learn, but that does not discredit him from him going one-on-one with me one day at all. I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care if you're greener than the grass. I don't care if you're a 30-year veteran. Again, I am not discriminating against anybody on any level.
Okay. Interesting
If you
comment.
want to match, let's do it.
I want to say hello here to the wild card Jason Storm. He is the ROEW Backyard Wrestling Champion of the World. You can follow ROEW on YouTube and Instagram at ROEW Backyard Wrestling. And I also want to wish Mr. Storm a lot of luck because he is expecting to be a father here very soon. So obviously we want to
congratulations.
Very good guy. He's a good man inside the ring, outside the ring. And I want to say hello to him. Obviously, I hope he's doing very well with his beautiful wife. And we appreciate that he even had a few minutes to check in. But, I was curious, and I want to come back to DBW for a second because this roster, I know I've asked a few of the talent in there, but because you've been here for a long time, I mean, how do you feel about the roster now? You guys have had such a huge roster. I think we're like, 32? Or I think Judgment told me 32 or 33 in the number right now is on the roster. So how do you feel about that now as somebody that kind of saw the roster kind of expand over time as much as it has? How do you feel personally with the expansion of the roster as now we get ready for the biggest show in the company's history?
Well, personally, the roster has to understand if you're coming into DBW, you're going to try to compete to be in that spot on the main card for our premium live events, so to say.
Right.
But they have to understand that, even if you don't get booked there, we do have Thunder Punch episodes that you could still.
I gotta be honest, with Thunder Punch stuff, I actually really enjoy watching that because the content you get there really, in a way, it enhances what we're going to see in these storylines. And it kind of gives you something. It's almost kind of like your guys' version of, let's say, a SmackDown or a Raw, where it kind of builds up to the show. So I think the Thunder Punch shows are great.
Yes, absolutely. And we did have Thunder Punch previously, and it didn't. I don't want to say it didn't work out because it did work out, but it kind of fizzled out, and we pretty much evolved going forward, and Thunder Punch reintroduced itself. And now, again, these other guys that aren't on our live events do have an opportunity to showcase their talent on Thunder Punch, and that's one great thing DBW has to offer, and that's tremendous for people like Big Text, and obviously at the time, of course, Chase Wakefield, but
the Bitcoin billionaire, the double B himself.
Yeah, the double B. We know the Bitcoin. Yeah, finish the rest. But
yes, I have to say he's coming back to Sportswire. I have to actually mention this. He's coming back to Sportswire in a few weeks. By the way, he has actually requested the opportunity to speak here at the end of the month in a few weeks, and he claims he has a lot to say. By the way, I'm just putting it out there.
He doesn't have a lot to say because the man looks like Gollum. Okay, he doesn't have a lot to say. Okay.
Well, okay. All right. Well, I'll let him answer that.
I will let him answer that. I'll even get a hold of him on social media. Going forward, these people that are up and coming in DBW.
Azrael, I would throw in there also. The emerging big man. Yep.
These big men, these high flyers, these technicians, they have a platform on Thunder Punch, and they should be forever grateful that they have that platform, because these other companies out there really don't have a platform aside from their live event that they put on.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that's what's so important about the company. And that's why I want to ask you, this event coming up here, World War, which again, the 23rd, it takes place. It'll air on YouTube on the 14th of October. And I said this to some of the guys here. Brandon came on. Obviously, Judgment answered the question. And Obviously, Chase at the time answered the question a little bit to whatever extent it was just Chase Wakefield, right? So I'll leave that at that. But I mean, I feel like that this is the biggest event in the company's history. There's something building here. There's something special. It's almost like I said before, you guys are right there. It's on the cusp. You guys have music. You guys have sponsorship. You have all these different things that are all coming into play. I mean, is there extra pressure? Is there motivation? Is there nerves? I mean, there's got to be a different feeling here coming up next week than there's ever been in DBW. I'm curious what your perspective is on all this.
My perspective on all of it is, if you're as great as me, you're not nervous by any means. Because I'll tell you,
they say if you're nervous, it's a good thing, by the way.
Yes, they do. But again, when you're as great as me, yours truly, there's no reason to be nervous. Me going into World War, I am not nervous at all. But I cannot speak on behalf of the DBW roster. If they are new to this company, I would imagine that the butterflies are circulating in their stomach, because again, this is our biggest event of the year. Like you said, this could be the start of something huge going forward for DBW as a whole. And really, I feel that this entire locker room really has to up their game in order to, because right after World War, it's a complete total reset. Story-wise.
It's almost like your guys' WrestleMania in a way.
Yes, absolutely. It's an absolute total reset. So what you do at World War might have a little glimpse going forward of whatever else. But if someone new says, hey, I want to put on the match of the night, and goes out there and has match of the night, they can look at that and say, hey.
But I'm curious, though, because, again, we're seeing crowds now. We're seeing sponsorship. We have music. I mean, this is different from anything that the company has done.
Yes.
It does feel like, to me, that the company's going in another direction. I compare it almost in a way to like XCW, but I think you guys and I love XCW, and the owner has been extremely gracious with us. He has even plugged us on his shows, and I can't thank Fletch enough for that. But I think you guys even are a little different than that, because I find you have pro wrestlers on the roster. You guys have a crowd. You guys have something brewing here. It's not as if like you're renting out a gym and, it's, to me, the point is that I really feel like that this is going to set the tables from where you guys are going to be in a year from now in a whole different environment. That's just how I see it.
I mean, personally, Rev, you're not wrong. Where we are now as a company could completely change in an absolute year. Hopefully going forward, it gets bigger and better, and it, just keeps on growing. Because that's what, people at DBW want. But at the end of the day, it all starts at World War.
Oh, no question about that. It is going to be a world war, and you can watch on October the 14th on YouTube. Very simple. Dominating Breakout Wrestling. And you can follow the It Factor Cyrus. He is also on Twitter. I want to give him a plug. Yes. He's at it_factor_Cyrus. He is greatness personified, and the accolades don't lie. So the accolades don't lie. You can follow him again on Twitter at it_factor_Cyrus. Again, he is greatness personified, and the accolades don't lie. So obviously, that's where you can find him. Go follow him. I want to say hello also to the wild card Jason Storm one more time, who thanks us for the wishes.
Oh, absolutely.
And TBK, who is the Baltimore kid. He is now the host of the Be More Talkative podcast. He's on my link here on sportnarium.com/player. Says, evening, guys. Good to see you. Always. Thank you. I appreciate that. He's also here for us on football coverage here in the NFL Friday nights, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. So obviously, I've gotten that in a sense of DBW. We've got the show coming up. We've got crowds. You've addressed to the fact on what you may or may do coming up in the future. You've obviously addressed what you think about Mr. Judgment. But I have to ask you about Casey James. You have had a history with him. I might even say rivals or tops what you've done with Judgment. So what made him such an opponent that you had so much history with?
Me and Casey James go way back. And we've battled many times over our careers, and our careers have been parallel. We arrived at DBW together. But at the time, it was singles competitors, and then I joined the Dark Brotherhood with Mr. Judgment. And then what happened was we brought in Casey James. So we formed the Dark Brotherhood, and then after that, we branched out. What ended up happening was Mr. Judgment turned on. At the time, it was Phoenix. He turned his back on him. And then what happened was, going right along, Mr. Judgment turns back on me. And then I won the DBW World title. And then fast forward after that, it's like a full circle. The next opponent in line was Casey James. And we had, again, with our way our storied past was, he even had sponsors. He had sponsors at one time. And I got a hold of his sponsors, and his sponsors did not like what he was doing. So the sponsors dropped him.
Wow. Okay.
Not many people know that. You know, he made $5,000, as he said in his theme, and he had all these sponsors with Chef Boyardee and so on and so forth. And I reached out to his sponsors, and
it's funny. Somebody today actually called me. This is no joke. I feel like everything we speak about, it's kind of like all this stuff is a shoot. We didn't plan this, but somebody actually called me before we went on the air, which is kind of one of the reasons why we were delayed. Actually asked me about sponsorship, and it was like a real conversation. And I'm like, huh? And it was like a real somebody I know who has a connection. I don't want to go into too many details. Was asking me all these questions about my background and blah 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 blah. So this is like your life again, part 2 with you.
Yes, part 2. And when I got a hold of their his sponsors, let's just say Casey James was pretty ticked, but he did say that he did not need the sponsors to be the top guy in DBW. We had our last man standing match. I even mocked his entrance. I even came out like him, mocked it and everything. And at the end of the day, that was one of my most memorable matches, as well as long as alongside Mr. Judgment's Heaven's Gate match.
I have to actually ask you about that, because I've noticed that you've changed your music since the last time we saw you in the ring. You had actually had one song and you changed, and I feel like, who was the band that you had before? I was trying to think. It wasn't Nightwish. Was it Lacuna Coil you had? It was one of the songs you had.
What happened was, I have.
Then you had Deep Purple. Didn't you have Deep Purple at one point? Perfect Strangers.
That was in RCW.
Okay, but you had a bunch of different songs. I was kind of curious, actually.
Yes,
Speaking of music, I mean,
I competed in RCW. I would say at least 3 times.
Okay.
And the direction that they were putting me in was I was going to be a heel. And
that makes sense, because Perfect Strangers and ECW was the triple threat. That was
I'm a huge fan of Shane Douglas, and I had to pay homage to him.
Oh, great wrestler, phenomenal talent.
Absolutely. And in DBW, I had Playing the Saint by Digital Summer. That was my theme I used. And then when I was in a storied rivalry with whoever I was competing against at the time, it was Avenged Sevenfold, Hail to the King.
Okay, I know that song.
And then when I was in the Dark Brotherhood, we used, like you mentioned, Lacuna Coil. We used Blood, Tears, Dust.
Yeah, that was the one I heard. I was like, wow.
When I came back, that's the one I've been using ever since then.
You really went deep there in the music catalog. Lacuna Coil. I mean, I was like, wait a minute, that's Lacuna Coil. And I was like, wow, he really is deep. And it was funny because Havoc played, I think it was the Zoo, but the Bruce Dickinson cover. Then you did Lacuna Coil. I mean, I guess, what inspired you to find Lacuna Coil?
Pretty much when I was coming back after the injury I mentioned previously in this live feed, I wanted to go back to my roots. I wanted to go back to where I started many years ago in DBW. And I said the only way I could do that is going back to the very first theme that I used, which was Lacuna Coil, Blood, Tears, Dust. And then when I used it, obviously I got the ovation. Everyone was saying, welcome back. You know, the crowd was off the charts. So I felt it was needed to go back to where I all started to keep progressing forward this upcoming year.
All right. Well, that's very, very interesting stuff. I always like to mix some type of music here, but we got about 20 or so minutes here with, of course,
Yeah.
the legendary It Factor Cyrus, who is going to be a part of Dominant Breakout Wrestling's upcoming show here on September the 23rd. It'll be airing on the 14th of October. It is called World War. You can follow him also again on Twitter at it_factor_Cyrus.
Follow.
Yes.
Give a
What's that?
follow, people. People, give a follow.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute. I was actually plugging you and you were cutting me off. I'm like, oh, what did I say
Oh,
here?
I
So
would never, Rev, I would never cut you off. You're a stellar individual.
I appreciate that because I was trying to give you a nice little plug there. But again, please follow Cyrus
Yes.
again on Twitter at it_factor_Cyrus. And as a reminder, I'll be here tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, with the Blaze himself, Ace Christians. We're going to be talking all things related to DBW and their huge show coming up here, World War. And this individual says Casey James isn't in the same category as Cyrus.
That is a fair statement. Because again, like I mentioned, Casey James and myself had parallel careers. Casey James has gone in a far different direction, and I myself has gone into the other direction. We were former DBW tag champions.
Yes.
As part of the Dark Brotherhood, and again, our paths just went one way, and I went the complete opposite of where he was going. So to say we're not in the same category is a fair statement.
Okay, and that's why certainly that comment rings true. So I want to ask you this question. I know we're coming up toward the end of the time and such, and I want to try to work as much things as I can. But
hey, work as much as you want.
All right, fair enough. But you've been doing this for about 25 years, and I was curious about this because obviously you're one of the more veterans on the roster. And how do you feel wrestling has changed from when you started to where we are now? I mean, talk about some of that. I'd be curious because obviously you've been somebody who's been doing this a long time and has had a lot of success.
It definitely changed from being a technical aspect to now you see more high flying moves. I feel as if the wrestling business, it's all about spot.
It's lost the ring psychology, huh?
It has lost the ring psychology, absolutely 110%. It lost the ability to have two competitors go inside that squared circle and be ring generals of their craft and show the world what they're capable of without, saying, hey, I'm doing a springboard moonsault, or hey, I'm going to do a springboard forearm, or hey, I'm going to do a 450 splash. It's lost its art, in my opinion, because again, I'm a technical old school guy, but just this younger generation, up and coming generation,
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, and I do a lot of college basketball, and it reminds me of how when Sports Center became prevalent, everybody was about the slam dunk.
Yes.
And they were about the 3-point shot, basically the fancy dribble, the no-look pass. And at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the most important part. And in wrestling, I think it's kind of the same thing, where you're able to technically be able to do moves in the ring, perform them safely, but also be able to tell a story in a match, call the match, and be able to have a flow. So that's kind of where I see the similarities, where it's almost like we've become a fast food nation, as I always say. So I think that those are some of the similarities where wrestlers kind of see the highlights. They see on YouTube, they see a Ricochet move, they see a Kenny Omega spot, they see a Young Bucks spot, they see a Seth Rollins spot, and they want to be able to do all that. But what about the story of maybe actually kind of like looking in the eyes of the opponent, the lockup, to be able to stand there, to be able to kind of throw a punch and do not so much with it and kind of let the crowd come in, things like that?
Yes. I'm literally all for storytelling. I love telling a story inside that squared circle, and I will do it any day of the week, honestly. And in the words of Nirvana McDonald, I'll do it twice on Sundays. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, Rev. I think it's lost its art form. Is it a shame? It's 110% a shame. But at the end of the day, I hope that these up and coming competitors, wrestlers, and not just DBW alone, just other companies see that it's lost its art form, and they can incorporate, along with their high flying moves, the art of storytelling and captivating the audience that's there.
Okay, let me ask you then a follow-up question. I know I have a few comments. I'll say hello to these people in a second, but since you are a veteran, I'd like to ask you the same question that I asked the legendary Dean Allmark on the show. UK legend, had his own school, wrestled 5,000 times, and I get a sense you have the same type of experience. What advice would you give to up-and-coming wrestlers?
Stick to the basics. Absolutely stick to the basics. My advice is don't right out the gate. Do not start with the high fly. Literally stick to the basics, because once you stick to the basics, you could build a foundation upon the basics and expand your moveset. Because an audience would rather have somebody know what they're doing inside the squared circle, knowing how to tell a story, rather than someone that's green, that's a high flyer, to go and do flashy moves and come out with a victory. Storytelling 101. That's what I would tell them.
Do you conversely, because I have to ask this question.
Yeah, ask away.
Do you well, I'm going to ask kind of a follow-up obvious one. Do you give advice in the locker room? Do guys in the locker room come to you specifically?
Yes, I've had at times guys come to me and ask their opinion on a match or a move, what they should do character-wise, what they should do promo-wise. I've given multiple advice to anyone that has approached me. I am literally open for any type of advice that they ask. I would never absolutely once tell them anything negative. Everything's positive. If they do,
okay. That's interesting.
yes, it's positive feedback. If they do something negative, I would tell them, "Hey, you did this wrong, but let's correct it, and we could do it this way." So that way you could have a positive spin, and maybe it could be more, depending on what they're doing, catch the audience more attentively than what they already have.
That's interesting. I would have thought you would have been like, hey, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, because you can see a match, you can read a match because you have that much experience. And
Yes.
There are certain guys that they don't have that type of experience. I was like so fascinated. You actually said it was more like you will give the advice on a positive. Do you expect some of the younger wrestlers to ask for that advice? I mean, obviously there are certain guys that just may not, but do you expect, now that we have a big locker room in DBW, that some of the up-and-comers and the younger talent to kind of ask guys like yourself that advice?
Do I expect it?
You can be honest, because I would think as a veteran, you almost expect it, kind of like the rule of thumb is kind of to go into a locker room and ask questions.
But I wouldn't expect it 100%, because guys might be afraid to approach us veterans and to get feedback on what's what, because again, we're experienced. We've been there, and they might feel that the feedback that we provide isn't what they want to hear.
Yes, but again, I had another guy, Davey Blaze, on, who's a 14-year veteran in the UK, and he told me basically rule 101 is to go out and ask every veteran in the locker room for advice. That's rule number 101. He's basically like, look, Tom, and again, he traveled in Denmark, Italy, wrestled all around the world, wrestled Kevin Nash in a match, and told me, Tom, specifically, you have to go out in the locker room, introduce yourself to every veteran, and ask them for advice. So I find that fascinating that guys didn't do that. Let me get to some comments here. I know you're probably looking at the Jets-Bills score. Good evening, everyone. It's all about the art. I agree with that. That is Skulls the Soul Hunter. He also does some stuff out in California for the West Coast Wrestling Company. I think he does some security there. Valley Wrestling Connection. Also wrestles for WCE. And he also says it could be a Craven Rage wake-up call. Well, Craven Rage has got his own issues to worry about right now. I think he's obviously going to be focused on those things right now. We're here with obviously the it factor, Cyrus himself. And Cyrus, I have to ask you this question, and I'll ask it because I feel like I have to. And you're going to be on the show for sure on the 23rd of September. But Absolutely. What do you want to say to anybody that's going to be watching you in terms of your explanations tonight, which I'm sure you'll further elaborate on? And frankly, what do you want to say to anybody in the locker room who's going to be seeing you in DBW next week?
Well, I'll start off by the locker room. Listen.
All right, let's go with that.
I'm not putting the locker room on notice.
You're not.
No, I am not. I'm not sending them warning shots. I'm not telling them to watch their back. I'm not telling them nothing that they don't already know. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, they know what I am. They know what I bring to the table, and they know how I compete in that ring. So whoever I'm up against at World War better be ready. That's all I'm saying.
I think
Because
that is
I
right,
do
simple to the
I
point.
do guarantee, like I said previously in this live feed, everyone that watches on October 14th will get all the answers that they seek.
Well, I'm excited about this, by the way, and I want to tell you why I'm excited about October the 14th. It's actually literally 1 week to the day after my birthday. So I'm very excited about this because my birthday is October 7th. You guys are actually airing the show on October the
Yes.
14th. So this is actually great. So I'm actually really happy about this and I can't wait. In fact, I want to say that the owner of DBW actually personally invited me and I said, well, I'd love to come, but I'm in New York and you guys are going to be taping a little bit out of the way from me. So as much as I love to come,
Yes.
I'll certainly do my best to cover DBW, but certainly one day we'll make that happen. I want to say hello to somebody else here at ROEW, who, by the way, he did a number on a guy you probably heard of named Jack Delta. I mean, he certainly put Mr. Delta out to pasture. That is CJ Black, the good guy. He says, why does no one shake my hand in the locker room? Makes no sense. So why do you think sometimes guys don't shake his hand or other people's hands? Why do you think that might be, sir?
That might be due to the fact of how you present yourself in the locker room. If you go through the curtain and you're talking to the guys in the back and you think your ego is bigger than them, they ain't going to give you the time of day.
Okay, but now you and Judgment have a history. You might put out your hand to Judgment right now, and Judgment may not shake that hand back. What do you say in that case?
Hey, if he does not want to shake my hand, that's fine. I'm not going to hold that against anybody at the end of the day. I'm really not. I'm not going to. If you feel by not shaking my hand that I'm going to be offended, trust me, I am not going to be offended.
Okay, because some guys would take it basically like
Yes,
they would
some
throw
guys,
you into the fourth
yes,
wall.
some guys take it personal, and some guys think it's a jab at them, and it's disrespectful. And how could they do such a thing? Like, I get it, I really do. But again, if he's coming back through the curtain and he's looking at all these guys and he has this smug look on his face, like he just put on match of the night and he's better than everybody, and he's holding out hands, saying, hey, shake my hand, it was a good match, what do you think? And no one wants to shake his hand. There has to be some kind of chemistry between him and the guys in the back. That's my honest opinion.
Fair. I mean, I get some of that, but certainly, look, he's got his points. He's got his reasons why, and that's, I guess, would be up to him in his locker room. I can only speak for what you're telling us. I have
Yes.
a good comment here I'd like to pull up here before we get to closing thoughts here and one or
Okay.
two more questions. I've known Cyrus for many years. He is an amazing guy. He even helps out two young gentlemen who has disabilities, the art of wrestling, to have them enjoy the sport. What does that mean to you when you hear a comment like that? Known Cyrus for many years. He's an amazing guy. He even helps out two young gentlemen who have disabilities learn the art of wrestling to have them enjoy it. What does that mean to you?
It really means the fact that it doesn't matter if you're green. It doesn't matter if you know nothing about wrestling. If somebody came up to me and says, hey, I want to learn how to wrestle. I want to know the basics. I want to know how to perform in the ring. I want to know how to put on a promo. I want to know entrance techniques. Like, you name it, Rev, I will be more than happy to help anybody. I'm not going to shy away from anyone.
Well, your greatness personified. That's why.
Yes, absolutely. I'm greatness personified. But I'm not going to shy away from anyone that wants to learn this business. If you want to learn this business on the level I'm at, I'm more than happy to help. Obviously, there's other guys out there that are getting professionally trained. If you want to go that route, I'm sure I can more than happily point you in that direction as well, because I know a couple people as well that are being professionally trained. It's all about where you want to go in your career. And
Sure.
like I said, I will help anybody, whether it's someone that has a disability, whether it's someone that knows nothing about wrestling and just watches it on TV and is like, man, my dream is to wrestle. I will help anyone.
Well, I believe it, and I certainly know that if you want to learn how to wrestle, if you want to be a part of things,
Yes.
DBW has a very, very big show coming up September the 23rd. This is how you can get in touch with them. Dominating Breakout Wrestling on YouTube, dominating Backyard Wrestling on Facebook, and Cyrus himself, again, is on Twitter at _factor_Cyrus. Very simple, short, sweet, and to the point. Get in touch with DBW and Cyrus, and I'm sure they can certainly help out with all that.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I've asked you a lot tonight, but I want to ask you two more questions before I get to closing thoughts. The first one I have to ask the obvious one is, what did it mean to you to be the DBW World Heavyweight Champion?
To win the DBW title in a short amount of time really took me by surprise, and I was forever thankful for the company believing in me. Considering the fact they've only seen me wrestle for about a half a year.
Okay.
And to come in right out of the gate and talk with the higher ups and them look at me and say, "Hey, we want you to be the guy." And I was honored, and I said, and I asked them almost a million times, not a million. I said, "Are you sure you want me to be the guy?" And they're like, "Yes, we want you to be the guy." And I was like, "You do realize I've only been in this company for half a year?" And they said, "We know. We want you to be the guy."
Wow.
They entrusted my wrestling ability. They entrusted how my character was involving, and I am very, very honored to be a champion in a short amount of time that I was just starting in DBW.
Was that a lot of pressure on you coming into a company that you'd only been into a short time to all of a sudden be the top guy? Was that pressure at all?
It was a little bit pressurable, honestly, because again, I came in this company. I didn't know many people. The only person I knew at the time was Casey James. And I was, meeting all these different roster people, all the guys in the back. And I'm just like, okay, well, there's that guy. He does, this. He's a former world champ. And I don't want to say it was nerve-wracking because it really wasn't, but it was very uplifting and very encourageable, the guys in the locker room that I would speak with. And the fact that I was going to be the world champion meant something to myself as well as them, that they entrusted me to carry a company that was basically starting to build the foundation to where it's at today.
Oh, I mean, what you guys have done, I continue to say this here before I ask you the last question.
Yeah.
It's really phenomenal. You think about where DBW was to where DBW is now. I mean, it's really one of the most remarkable transformations that any company has really ever had. I mean, again, where you guys were to where you guys are now, and I've even said this on prior shows,
Yes.
I think where you guys will be. I mean, to me, it's almost like this is not where you guys are going to peak. I think it's only going to go up from here. What it becomes, I have no idea. What we label it, I have no idea. But I just know, to me, this is not the end game for DBW. So something tells me here that you guys in 2 years from now, might even be a year from now, but there's going to be just a even further transformation. That's why I want everybody to join the conversation, subscribe to the DBW YouTube page, follow them on Facebook, support Cyrus, support everybody in the locker room, whether you like them on the screen, off the screen. Just watch this company. This is a company that I try to make sure I put all my stuff down and watch their great content, especially World War coming up. So let me ask you this last question. I pretty much asked you everything I could. Yes. I have one more question for you in terms of, is there anything left that you haven't done that you want to accomplish, whether it's in DBW or anywhere else? Is there anything left for you, Cyrus, that you want to accomplish that you haven't done yet?
There's a lot for me to accomplish. As far as company wise, that is yet to be seen.
Okay.
But, I have a lot left in the tank, so to say.
Got that.
I'm not going around I'm not going away anytime soon. That's for sure.
Well, you told us at the very beginning of the show. So, I mean, we know that that's not going to happen. And so I would expect you to be here for a long time.
But as far as accomplishing anything, I don't have any major goals right now. But in the near future, I might. Just stay tuned. But going forward, whether it be UWF, whether it be DBW, the goal is simple. Go in, solidify my greatness even more than it already is, and to become at least a world champion in both companies before I finally hang it up and call it.
Well, you know what? Listen, I'll tell you what. You proved to us tonight that you're certainly going to have a lot to say. You're going to have a huge impact coming up here on this next show here, which we're going to take place on the 23rd of September. It'll air on the 14th of October. It is Dominant Breakout Wrestling's World War. And Cyrus, his chapter has not been written by a long shot just yet. The book of Cyrus, Not done by no means. You're going to want to stay tuned and follow all of that. I know that
Eh,
this is not the last we've heard of Cyrus from
No,
Sportswire.
we have not. I plan to be back here at some extent, and I will tell you right now, the book of Cyrus is just beginning.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. There is no question about that. And DBW, like I said, legitimately speaking, has become one of those companies. I put all my stuff down and watch. This is a company that I'm really, really proud to be able to have here on Sportswire Radio. This is a company that has earned its stripes. This is a company that to me has earned my support, and I think it should earn everybody else's support and join the over 3,270 plus
Yes.
subscribers on YouTube. Just do it. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. Their shows get thousands and thousands of views. Their shorts get thousands and thousands of views. It is a company that's basically on its way to getting millions of views by the end of the year. Trust me on that one. Basking in his greatness. Well, you know what? He's proved it tonight. I'll tell you that much. He's definitely proved greatness personified, and I'm looking forward to watching him. It has been a tremendous honor. I could certainly talk with you all night, but
Oh,
obviously you're a
absolutely.
busy man. You're getting ready for your return next week. You're getting ready to address the DBW universe and everything else that's in between. So I want to now give you the opportunity with closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? It has been an absolute tremendous honor to hear from you, sir. Now I turn it over to you. And anything else you want to plug, share, or say, the floor is yours.
First off, I want to thank you, the Rev, for giving me the opportunity and giving me this platform to explain my answers as to why I did what I did. That's number one. Number
Okay.
two, like I previously stated, World War is going to be a huge event. It's our mega event. It's the first one of its inception for DBW. It's going to be monumental to say the least, and my chapters are just beginning. DBW is my house of greatness. I have proclaimed that for many years, ever since I arrived, and it's going to continue to be my house of greatness. I've competed against many guys, and many guys have fallen to my King's Curse, which is a running Death Valley driver. But at the end of the day, chapter 1 will be written at World War.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think here we have a lot to look forward to, not only when it comes to DBW, but the future of Cyrus, and especially next week, World War. We are going to find out. I know I am very, very curious, as well as the rest of the people that have tuned in here. And one more time tonight, you can follow him on Twitter at it_factor_Cyrus. I'm telling you, this is a guy we're going to have on many, many more times ahead, as well as the rest of the roster. And I want to say hello to one more person that is joining us from Australia. He's a little bit late, but a little bit early his time, because it's 1:15 p.m. Australian time. That is Mr. Ace Reed. He is the host of the Wired Up podcast. He says hello. Could be another venue as well for more talent to come on. Ace is a young guy doing a good job out there, and we will probably see him back on Sportswire next month, in the month of October. And we say good day to him, and follow him out there on _backyard_elite_wrestling on Instagram. Check him out as well on YouTube. And before I close, I want to also give my thoughts and prayers to all of the victims, especially for me locally in Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn, for September 11th, 22 years to the day today. And I wanted to at least spend a minute or two on that. My thoughts and prayers to everybody out there impacted by that horrific day. And my friend, I do want to thank you. You've definitely proven why you are somebody that we're going to be paying attention to very closely. I am sure some people in DBW tomorrow night will tune into what Mr. Christian has to say. I'm sure he'll have a few responses and some. I'll let him answer that tomorrow night. But until then, it was your show. You definitely proved it. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next one. And thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your decorated career. And I look forward to the next step in your decorated career.
Absolutely. And like I said, thank you for having me. And everybody, again, stay tuned, because chapter 1, World War. Stay tuned.
Oh, I'm definitely staying tuned. And ladies and gentlemen, that was the It Factor Cyrus himself here from DBW. And DBW, again, show one more time. September the 23rd is the taping. It'll air October the 14th on the YouTube page, Dominating Breakout Wrestling. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, and the owner of Sportswire Radio. Again, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Ace Christian, the Blaze, will be in Cyrus's chair. Let's see if he lives up to these standards and everybody else from DBW. I don't know. I know that Mr. Judgment, though, is going to be watching that one closely. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you're going to go back to your regularly scheduled programming. But until then, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. And thank you, everybody here, for tuning in. And again, my thoughts and prayers to everybody impacted on September 11th. And until then, thank you and see you tomorrow.